Greetings and welcome to episode 27 of the Sustaining the Herd podcast, brought to you by Agri-Services and Engineering of Raymond, Nebraska. I'm Andrew Wedel, and as normal, I'm joined in the studio with my co-host, Brock Vetick.
Hey there, Andrew.
And we're coming to you today from the American Biogas Council meeting in Denver, Colorado. And there's a lot of things going on here, and we're looking forward to basically getting you up to speed of where the biogas and the RNG industry is. But first of all, we'd like to welcome our new listeners and tell you a little bit about Sustaining the Herd. And Sustaining the Herd is really about everything sustainability related to agriculture and animal agriculture. And what does that mean? It means taking care of the air that we breathe and the water that we drink, and as well as caring for the animals in ways that people in society find acceptable. It means taking care of our resources and doing things efficiently and maximizing the use of all of our resources, doing more with less. That's a really key part of sustainability. And then lastly, sustainability means business sustainability. We have to have agricultural enterprises that are successful and profitable so that they want to continue to stay in business and feed us, clothe us, et cetera, for a long time to come. So welcome new listeners, and of course, thank you very much, and welcome back to our return listeners as well. Brock, get us going as far as what are you seeing here so far at the American Biogas Council meeting?
Yeah, thanks for teeing it up, Andrew. I'll start off by saying that coming to conferences like Biogas Americas, I think we're really able to get a temperature reading of the industry, because a meeting like this is where the biogas industry comes to hang out. And we're able to really observe trends and industry happenings here. And there are a few things that we've noticed leading up to today and that we're especially seeing here in Denver this week. And the first one I'd like to talk about, and I know we've talked a bit about it on the show here in the past, is that the biogas markets are jittery. They have been for a while, and we're still seeing that today.
Yes, indeed. The cow and cattle manure keeps coming and coming and coming, and the biogas, or the potential for biogas, keeps coming and coming and remains. But there's a lot of things that are a lot of unknowns. One of them is offtake. But then there's lots of other things that are affecting this industry, like tax credits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a laundry list of things. Tax credits and tax incentives are a big one. Those are ever changing. A couple others are policies that may or may not go away based on the political landscape, and potential new policies that could come online that people are paying attention to. And I think, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention tariffs, especially after we talked about ag trade and tariffs with Andy Fabian here recently. That's something that impacts the biogas industry as well. So just a lot of variables and levers being moved in the markets right now that are essentially introducing some volatility that is really outside of anyone's control. And we just have to do our best to weather that storm and be resilient with projects and with business models in the biogas industry.
Yes, that's right. And there's a couple things that are coming down the pike that I think we could consider to be imminent. There's going to be a judgment or ruling on 45Q, which is the tax credit for the production of biofuels.
Yes.
And then the other big one is Congress will set the standards for basically what will set the RIN price, and that is what the petroleum companies are going to need to buy in terms of RINs and renewable energy credits.
Yeah, the renewable volume obligations to offset their fossil fuel activities.
Right.
So yeah, some things coming down the line, and I think everyone's just kind of sitting back and waiting to see what happens there.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we were to say start with, I think that probably the biggest buzz around here is back to that the demand side of things. Again, the supply is there. The supply keeps coming, but it so much is on the demand, or is, I think what people call as the offtake of renewable natural gas. And there's a couple things that are really kind of interesting, is that, and this kind of comes with the change in administration and in the White House, but also just kind of what the reality is right now in the landscape when it comes to energy demand, energy consumption, and that is, there's still this talk of reducing carbon footprints and greenhouse gas emissions, but there's a bit of a shift to, we need more sources of energy,
and domestic sources
and domestic sources of energy. And so renewable natural gas produced by animal manure, boy, oh boy, it is an absolute home run when it comes to just expanding that the energy portfolio of the United States.
You're exactly right with all those comments, Andrew. I really believe that we're seeing a shift in how the market and how the U.S. as a whole is viewing renewable energy production. The environmental attributes and the physical commodity of the gas are being viewed a bit differently. Energy production is energy production. We still care about the renewable aspects, but that's not in the spotlight right now.
Yeah.
And we saw this, experienced this firsthand when you and I attended a session here at Biogas Americas this morning, focused on RNG among several other biofuels, which RNG may play a role in the production of those. So I'd like to talk a bit more about that. And I think RNG is a good one to start with. So another shift that we've seen in the industry, maybe not since the start of the new administration, but goes back a bit further than that, is RNG is not always the end product anymore. It is being viewed a couple ways. It could be the end product, sold as renewable natural gas into, say, the transportation market, or it could be used as process energy to fire boilers in a manufacturing facility or in an ethanol production facility, for example. Or it could actually be an intermediate feedstock where it is synthesized into other more advanced biofuels, such as sustainable aviation fuel and a host of others.
Yeah, let's just kind of go into some of those in just a little bit more detail. And, this is, well, on one hand, I was going to say this is great for the people in town, so to speak, to kind of get an idea of all the things that can be derived from renewable natural gas. But I'll tell you, everybody in the industry, producers of renewable natural gas and vendors, et cetera, all people in the industry would be really well served and probably pretty doggone impressed to know all the things that come from renewable natural gas. And it's really funny that, up until, I'll say even recently, everything was about RNG. It's very reminiscent of the first coming of digesters. It was all about electricity, and very, very monofocused. And I think we had been very monofocused on RNG this coming. But because of these tightening markets, because of people needing to be innovative and to kind of have different offerings, we're kind of recognizing all these other things that can come from renewable natural gas. And you mentioned sustainable aviation fuel, and so what an amazing thing. You can take renewable natural gas and convert it to sustainable aviation fuel. We're not talking about the book and claim, right, where you're separating the attributes from the gas. We're literally talking about taking molecules of methane produced or derived from manure and turning it into fuel that runs airplanes. How cool is that? That is absolutely amazing.
It's really cool. Yeah, taking the physical molecules from a farm in Nebraska, for example, and they are being transported to an aviation fuel production facility, and then that might be fueling the airplane that is flying one of us around the world.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yep. And then one of the byproducts of making sustainable aviation fuel, which people in this business call SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuel.
We love our acronyms here at the ABC and the RNG.
We're not finished with the acronyms, and so sustainable aviation fuel is one option for RNG. Another is taking those molecules of methane and converting them into bio-derived propane. And so now we're going to our gas grill in the summertime, and we're going to fire it up, make some steaks.
Talk about sustainability. The animal that steak came from pooped out some manure. That manure got turned into RNG and then propane, and now I'm cooking that same animal with that.
How many times do I have to say agriculture is the greatest
Love me a sustainable ribeye, Andrew.
That's right. So propane is another. I almost said byproduct, not a byproduct. It's a product of natural gas. What else, Brock?
Well, this may not be something that RNG can be a feedstock for, but I want to mention CO2, or biogenic CO2, we'll often call it. We know that, biogas, when it's produced in an anaerobic digester, it's anywhere from, let's say, 50 to 70% methane on average. And then that other 30 to 50% is other gases, impurities, CO2 being a big one of them. And we know that there is a market. There are uses for CO2. So that can be another revenue stream for these projects and a renewable source of CO2 for food processors that might need it for refrigeration or making things like dry ice. Yeah. And that's not only created from RNG upgrading when we take raw biogas and upgrade it to RNG, but CO2 is a byproduct from the production of these other biofuels too. So that's a very important one.
Yeah, and so I would have to say it's not being done yet, but we can clearly see it on the horizon. Mm-hmm. That you could potentially, brace yourself for this. You could potentially be carbonating your favorite adult beverage with CO2 derived from RNG that was produced from animal manure. So now you're eating your steak cooked by propane, drinking your beer.
Not to mention the grain that was used to produce that beer could have been fertilized with digestate that came from the manure from the steak that you're eating.
It just keeps going and going and going.
What I'm gathering here is that I need to eat more steak and drink more beer. Is that correct?
Yep. Well, okay. As a matter of fact, when we wrap up here, that's what we're going to go do.
Awesome.
And then the other one that they're talking about is methanol. Methanol is a ship fuel.
Yeah, maritime fuel they call it.
A maritime fuel, and they're talking about if ships are going to carry methanol, they might as well run on methanol.
Correct.
And so I think that's incredibly fascinating. That is another product of RNG. And I've also been hearing people talk about a process called bunkering. You hear that? Where they are taking ships, loading them with methanol, and taking them out to sea to be more or less an intermediate gas station for ships as they go.
It's kind of like when planes refuel with a tanker and they lower the boom. It's the gas station in the middle of the ocean.
Yep. So methanol is another product of RNG.
One more I'd like to mention is ammonia, which can also be used as a maritime fuel for shipping.
And refrigerant.
Correct, and refrigerant. And we know that ammonia also has some nitrogen fertilizer value as well. So there could be a few markets for that. And this can be created from RNG. And what's interesting is that ammonia is something that can be handled pretty easily with existing infrastructure. So maybe a bit of a drop-in fuel. The panel talked about that, which is really valuable to the market, that additional expensive infrastructure may not need to be built in order to utilize this fuel.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you said the last thing, but I've got one more last thing
Go
as
for
it
it.
relates to fuels. And this isn't necessarily a different, this isn't a derivative from RNG. It is RNG, but it's a different use, and that is the RNG as a motor fuel. And that is viewed as a huge potential area of growth for our industry. I mean, California is already doing a lot of it, but it is one of those things that's going to continue to take off, and it's going to represent just something that's creating more demand and something that's good for our industry.
Certainly, and our returning listeners may remember the episodes we've done with Charles Love of Trillium Energy talking about that, and then we had David King and Tom Quimby with Cummins Incorporated talking about their RNG engine.
Yep.
So the market is active in that space.
The market is active in that space, and the technology is there.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny, I said last thing, you said one more last thing, and guess what? I have a third last thing. Third time's hopefully a charm on last thing here. You mentioned electricity briefly, and I don't believe the market is there right now, but it's something that was mentioned in the panel we attended earlier, particularly around data centers. We know that artificial intelligence, AI, and the digital infrastructure is really being built out, and we live in an increasingly digital world. And data centers are popping up all over. I drive by one weekly going up near my home in Lincoln, Nebraska. It's over a $500 million data center project. And those things use a lot of power.
Say 50 megawatts? Was that?
I think it was way more than that. It depends on the size of the data
right.
center, but that could be a realistic number. But they mentioned that that the grid can't necessarily provide enough power for these projects, and they require reliable power. So RNG could play a role as a power generation source for data centers, for example. So even if the market's not quite to electricity yet, I think it's something on the horizon that we still need to be paying attention to. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that the if we could summarize this little aspect of what we've learned is that we've got options, whereas it was once upon a time only electricity, and that's all you got. Whereas we've got a lot of options, and I think although the markets are jittery, things will improve, and I think the future is bright. So so there's that. The other thing that we hear a lot of people doing, of course, when times get tight, and in this case, when offtakes are really kind of thinner, profit margins are kind of thin, what it forces you to do is optimize. So there's a lot of talk about, okay, we've got these plants built. Well, now how do we optimize them so that we just make as absolute much biogas as we possibly can? It's the second leg on the three-legged stool of sustainability. It's doing more with less.
Efficiency.
Yeah.
When the going gets tough, the tough get going.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing right now. As there are a lot of projects out there. Some may be successfully operating. Others may have failed or come across some roadblocks. I would label these as distressed assets. So we're seeing some of those projects being sold and developers picking them up and saying, how can we come in and be more efficient and optimize these projects? And that's something that we enjoy being able to see once in a while in our consulting work. Just looking at how can this project be made better.
Yeah, I think some of these digester projects, just by coupling offtake and capital costs, et cetera, I think the economics of them kind of might be like restaurants or golf courses. It might not be the first owner that's the most profitable at doing it, and so I think we see some of these projects changing hands, and perhaps being more successful in the long term.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, and on that same topic, when it comes to optimization, I know that there are a few things that you see in your day-to-day work as an agricultural engineer, Andrew, that really can help to optimize a project. And I wanted to ask if you could talk a little about that.
Well, I think one of the things that we're seeing now that we have a lot more operational AD plants operating in the field, there's and a lot of those digesters are running with sand-laden manure, and they're not digesting sand-laden manure, but they are digesting sand-separated manure.
Yes.
But with that, we're seeing developers, operators, et cetera, come to us in, how do we optimize our sand separation systems to basically minimize maintenance, minimize cleanups. And so this is something that's we're being asked to do, and it's definitely on our radar at this time. And of course, I always remind developers, operators, and whatnot, sand killed digesters before anybody bedded with sand, on dairies. And so a little bit of sand goes a long way. A little bit of sand comes in with the feed, and a little bit of sand or grit times 5,000, 7,000, 10,000 head, it adds up.
If the sand recovery with the separation system is, say, in the high 90s, say 95 to 99%, there's still a few percent getting past, and a few percent times tons, quite literally tons of sand a day adds up, and that equals a digester tank full of sand.
Yeah. And I always look at it, even, you're right. And so, you take 1% sand bypass, where that would be best in class, but, percent doesn't settle, tons settle,
Correct.
So 1% times, as I said, 10,000 milking cows, you start adding up a lot of tons of sand. So anyway, you know what, Brock, this reminds me, this could be a great tee up for a future Sustaining the Herd episode, and that is just more of an in-depth discussion on sand and digesters, because boy, we get a lot of questions about it.
I agree. I think we might have to work on that one. I encourage everyone to stay tuned. You got a sneak peek of that here today.
Oh, all right.
And, Andrew, with all of that being said, I think that we've covered the bases on what we're hearing and seeing here in Denver at Biogas Americas this week.
Yeah. And, I've got a confession to make. Make a confession to all of our listeners. I oftentimes will go to meetings. I should say, in past days, I would go to meetings and just find the programs to be kind of dull and not much new going on, and I found my time much better spent working in my hotel room in peace and quiet and really productive times. Whereas you come to these American Biogas Council meetings, and they are home runs from the time they do the keynote until the time they draw the curtain. And so they're fantastic meetings. And I'd encourage anybody who is in the RNG, operating in the RNG space, whether you're a developer, a producer, sales, whatever, these meetings are the place to go to kind of really get a feel for what's going on.
Yeah, it's well worth the time and financial investment to attend these meetings. Yeah. And on the same token, before wrapping this all up, I would just like to say that, kind of like I said earlier, these meetings are where the biogas industry comes to hang out, and it is so valuable to have face-to-face time and interaction with the people with which we work, and to just do some networking and make some new connections. And, at the end of the day, people do business with people. And I think that's one of the best parts about coming to these events is getting time with folks in the industry. And with all of that, we'd like to thank all of our listeners for tuning in today. And we look forward to being back with you again in a couple of weeks for the next episode. But until then, thanks for joining the herd today.